Chapter 1 of A Story of One Short Life, 1783 to 1818, by Elisabeth G. Stryker. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Samuel J. Mills. Chapter 1. Ancestry, Birth, Boyhood, Conversion. Our country is quietly enjoying the benefits of a great activity. Foreign missions are still feeling a noble impulse, and the origin of this force was, under God, in the heart and brain of Samuel J. Mills. It is a name known to us, but a history almost forgotten. Only upon the shelves of some antiquarian, or in the undisturbed library of some old homestead, can a volume be found bearing the title Mills' Memoirs. Take it down, blow the dust from the leaves yellow with 67 years, and you will find the narrative related in the stately, old-time style, and somewhat laudatory and expansive. He had no son, so Adoniram Judson had gladly to record the details of his busy life. The writer was Dr. Gardner Spring, who laments having failed in the attempt to obtain what appeared to him to be important information. We are thankful to him for gathering even these fragments. From a sketch of Solomon Giddings, the Damon Memorial, a letter from a relative of Mills, and the life of Henry Obookiah, have come a few incidents and facts, but mainly in the record of Dr. Spring have we found our story of one short life. Such hid treasures should find the light, even though quarried by unskillful hands. Biographies are apt to seem discouraging. In the beginning, the attention being riveted upon the supposed hero, meets with a shock in finding it has been following the history of his great-grandfather. The scattered energies are then directed upon the grandfather, only to meet with a second delay. Again recovering and following the father's fortunes, the son, the subject of the work, is at last introduced. The great-grandfather of our hero must be brought in just long enough to answer one question. He was once asked, "How did you educate 4 sons at Yale College, and give each a profession?" His reply was, "Almighty God did it, with the help of my wife." The grandfather of our hero was drowned while some of his children were still young. His widow, committing their babes to the God of the fatherless, especially offered for his service a son named Samuel John. He became a minister, and for many years was settled in Torringford, Connecticut. He was eminent for his ability and character. Mrs. Stowe said of him, "He was one ingrain New Englander. Of all the marvels that astonished my childhood, there is none I remember to this day with so much interest as Father Mills." This was the name by which he was extensively known. His wife was a woman exemplary and devout. Being assured that the 3 preceding generations were commandment-keeping, we shall see how the Lord showed mercy unto the 4th. Almighty God and a true mother secure for many a man's sons not only education, but large efficiency and honor. The 7th child, born April 21st, 1783, in this Torringford home, was a son named after his father, Samuel John. The child grew to be a mighty instrument in God's hand, which he in his wisdom selected, knowing the fineness of the material with which he dealt. That we too may know something of the tempering of the steel, we are permitted a reverent glance into that pious mother's bosom. Before the birthday came, she continually dedicated the little life beneath her heart to the God who is pleased to accept such gifts. During all his childhood he received the most careful Christian training. Nourished in such a home garden, and shined on by such mother light, we cannot wonder that the child grew toward the sun, and that the roots of religious character struck deep and spread wide. When but a little child, he showed an unusual concern of conscience. At 15, the town in which he lived was greatly aroused and revived. His friends and acquaintances received the blessing, and he was deeply interested. But the revival passed, leaving him with a bitter, rebellious feeling in his heart. About this time, one fine cold winter morning, a merry sleigh load drove from his father's house. He, with his brothers, sisters, and cousins, about 18 in all, went to spend a few days with his uncle in West Hartford. Samuel had recently come into the possession of a fine farm. He was gay and ambitious. His companions, fearing his good fortune might make him feel a little too high-minded, sought to tease him. The evening before their return, after eating nuts and apples, they agreed to have a little singing. They struck up "Hark from the Tombs of Doleful Sound" to the tune Bangor. They sang it slowly and solemnly, now and then casting at him glances from their mischievous eyes. He sat a silent listener, while their song, sung in fun, made an earnest impression of which he could not rid himself. Soon after his farm was sold, and at 18 he determined to go to Lichfield and study in the academy. As he was leaving home, his mother's anxious heart could not let him go without inquiring for his soul's health. Other mothers know the pain she suffered when he told her, "For 2 years I have been very sorry God ever made me." She replied to him as her wise heart prompted her, and sent him on his way. She went where all mothers of boys must go often, to her knees, alone with God. He had not gone far on his journey when he met a friend. It was the Good Shepherd whom that mother's urgent prayer had sent searching for the wanderer. It was as if he met Christ in his path. He looked up at the great trees and down at the blossoms, and in everything saw God. He became so impressed with the perfections of the Holy One he had so long resisted that he lost sight of himself. He sat down in the woods to wonder and to pray. It was not until some time after that he realized any change in himself, and not until he returned from Lichfield did his father perceive it. His conversion was thorough. Not only was he turned about, his face Godward instead of selfward, but he was impelled toward those sitting in darkness. In his childhood, from his mother's lips, he often heard stories from the lives of Brainerd, Eliot, and other missionaries. He heard her prayers for them and their great undertakings. Once he heard her say, "I have consecrated this child to the service of God as a missionary." Now it was his joy to follow those noble examples, and to fulfill his part in the plans of God and his mother for him. His parents approved of his determination, though the thought of separation tore their hearts. His mother said to him, "I cannot bear to part from you, my son." When he reminded her of her vow, she burst into tears and never after made complaint. To his father he said that he could not conceive of any course of life in which to pass the rest of his days that would prove so pleasant as to go and communicate the gospel of salvation to the poor heathen. This desire to spread the gospel grew to be a sublime purpose, and from it he never wavered. He set about his plannings with this supreme end in view. Thanking God for his own salvation, he laid his life in God's hand, imploring Him to use it for those who had as yet no knowledge of that mercy. The Lord took him from the plow as He did Elisha. He left the field for the college. End of chapter 1.